Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Really usual, and thank you all for coming. Welcome to this our January talk for the Dublin Bay Old Gaffers Association. We're also going out on Zoom tonight, so welcome to all our Zoom lookers on. Well, thank you. I think it's fair to say we're in for a treat tonight. Our two speakers tonight, I don't think need an awful lot of introduction to most of you. I think again it's fair to say that they're probably the most experienced gaff-rigged sailors in the whole of Ireland. They both have a lot of ocean voyaging behind them. Adrian Spence and Paddy Barry. Adrian was once the owner of a Bristol Channel Pilot Cutter called Madcap, gaff-rigged pilot cutter called Madcap. It was built in 1878, and he did a lot of voyaging in that. I'm glad to say that it's still in existence and working away as a working museum exhibit in France. And of course, Paddy Barry did a huge amount of sailing in his famous Galway Hooker, the St. Patrick. Both of them actually sailed up to Greenland at one stage some years ago together on Paddy's hooker, the St. Patrick. And Paddy Barry, as you know, sailed his Galway Hooker over to New York at one stage and up to Greenland. And he's also one of the few people that have sailed through the Northwest Passage, along with another crew in a boat that was built by Shackleton, a big aluminium boat. Not content with that, he carried on and sailed through the Northeast Passage. He came out north of Norway. Last year, they sailed up inside the Arctic Circle. I think there are very few people that I know have sailed inside the Arctic Circle. But Paddy and Adrian, along with some other crew members, sailed up there last year on Adrian's Ketch in Paradiso. And they called that a number of places, including the Orkneys and in Norway. And that's going to be the subject of tonight's talk. So it's a great pleasure to hand over to Paddy and Adrian. Thank you.
I sail with Paddy on the St. Patrick. Thank you. From Murmansk, around the north of Norway, and back to Dublin in the 1990s, and then again in West Greenland. And then I sailed Madcap to West Greenland. And people said, shouldn't sail, I wouldn't go on the ice. Of course, that's bothered. I had the notion of sailing to have too much to hold, and I'm loath to put the pint down. But I will for just a minute. So I had the notion of sailing to Svalbard for many years. And that came more into fruition. I got the right boat for it, heavy Spitzbergen Ketch. And I decided to do it last summer. I phoned in January, phoned Paddy and said, you've been up around this bit, would you have any charts of Svalbard that I could borrow? And he very unhelpfully said no. And I said, well, do you fancy the trip? Thinking he would say no. And he said, I'm okay. And that was fortunate because I mentioned it to boys who normally sail with me, the Linen Baron, who wouldn't go, to John Ferguson, who decided he wouldn't go. We've since discovered that the bachelor boy has a lady in tow, and I don't know if he's about to become a fallen man or not, but he didn't go either. So we started looking for crew. You need for a trip like this the boat, you need the crew, you need the organisation. Gone are the days where you load up a boat and go to the Arctic. There are regulations, there are rules, there are forms to be filled in, and you need a secretary. Ours did not wear a short skirt and was not pretty, it was more grizzly. And it was Paddy who organised all the permissions that are needed and the regulations we have to abide to. But more of that later. If we could move on, Mark, to the next one, please. So the basic plan for the trip was to leave, go to Stornoway, then to the Faroes, then straight up to Svalbard. I should say that this island, the biggest island, is called Spitzbergen. Svalbard is the three biggest islands. My idea, depending on the ice here, was to go up and down just the west coast, which will always be clear of ice in the summer, possibly get right around it. And then hightail it back down, past maybe going into Bear Island, down to northern Norway to Tromsø, and then the Fulton down to somewhere about here, Allison, maybe over to Shetland, Orkney, and home. Dead easy. And we set aside 12 weeks. So we needed crew. This is part of Paddy's work, getting the information about all the crew, dates, email addresses, and next of kin, and their phone numbers. Well, Paddy's on age, you understand. Next of his work. The two things that are obviously crucial are food and drink, soft and alcoholic. Paddy, the secretary, took on the drink aspect and loaded the boat with duty free. Sandra, my wife, took on the onerous task of putting food together. Now, the boat is a nice boat, which is quite a luxury boat, just 2 fridges. Previously, one for wine, one for beer. That had to change. So Sandra put together recipes and menus for us. The trip was divided into 4-week sections, so 3 4-week sections. She put all of the food together for each 4-week trip, or each 4-week piece. She then put it in a gobble. Our local butcher vacuum packed every cup and all the fish as well. Then he deep froze it. We used one of the fridges as a freezer. We're not entirely sure how long that would last, but it lasted the whole trip. So Sandra packed everything we needed for the first 4 weeks. And when it came to make our dinner, or breakfast, or lunch, we simply looked at the menus that she put together, picked what you wanted to make, and that meant that we didn't run out of things on the way through. We didn't end up with bags of rice and roast bugs and that sort of stuff. And at the end of the first 4 weeks, we moved everything out of the aft cabin from the lockers into the galley for the second 2-week period and so on. And as a system that worked tremendously well, it also kept the cost under control. So you need a boat. It's got a slidey stern, the next remark, please, and a lady to chase wherever you may go. So the Vagabond 47, she's 23 tons. She's a Ketch. She has, I said, 2 fridges. She has chart plotter. She's IIS. VHF and all those alphabetical electronic things. The crew we had to get. So Paddy and I were doing the whole trip, and we were aiming for 4, possibly 5 for each leg, although the 2 of us could sail the boat if needs be. On our left is King Billy, who is from Belfast. He's really a racing man from Strangford Lough, but he came on this trip. It was a great asset. On the right is Jack Kiernan from Santry. Jack, some of you know him, of course. He's the guy who finished his leaving cert and decided that he fancied a gap year because he wasn't ready for uni, but he didn't fancy going to land on the beach in Vietnam or whatever that crap. So his gap year, he joined the tank regiment in the British Army, which, hey, there you go. So he's now a school teacher of history and politics. So the plan was to say we hammered up to we left here after the regatta, and 48 Dublin Bay Old Gaffers Regatta is not good practice for going on a sea trip. In fact, it's not even good practice for going around Hofed into the northeast coast 5. So I wasn't a well-wee boy at that bit. And the test of black green in reverse was not good. So we went to Stornoway. We got diesel a couple of times. Paddy went for a run. And then a day and a half up the Faroes, where we had probably a northeast force 5 or 6. And the big boat's ideal on that, and she flew for a time up into the Faroes, which, as you see, so much of a star, and it's difficult. And we had 3 stops. One was the first harbour we get into on the south, then Tórshavn, where we go over. And that Tórshavn is totally different from the rest of the Faroes. The rest of the Faroes is remote. It's basic, it's pleasant, but it's harsh. Tórshavn is chic, it's sophisticated, it's well dressed, it's expensive restaurants that we just couldn't go into, but it's a lovely place. To get into Tórshavn, the brand new engine gave trouble. The gearbox stopped working, and with plenty of revs, but the propeller wasn't really turning. And my understanding, it should be turning. And it was funny because the engine's making all the right noises, and it's just our notes were going slower and slower. I never said about it, I think we're going to race how we are. So we tried the revs, as you do, and nothing happened. And then we realized, so we strapped the inflatable on the side of the boat with a 4 horsepower outboard. And that gives about a knot and a half and got us in. Got a mechanic, and he looked around the gearbox and he said, "Oh, that's brand new." And we said, "You're a very clever man." And he said, "I can't see anything wrong with it." I was thinking maybe it's something inside, but somehow it fixed itself. And for the smart arses, there's something around the propeller. There wasn't, because the boys hanging over the side looking. So it fixed itself, and off we went with reduced confidence in our near range. So this is our third stop. We're now in one of the northern islands, where there's a Danish archaeologist who lives there, married to a Russian lady. He came over there 30 years ago to excavate a Viking settlement, which is still there and is fascinating. He took us around it. Paddy knew him before and had been in contact. And this is the harbour. We're the only boat in it. It's an old fish harbour. But as we saw in Norway, because of the Danish money, it's quite wealthy now. And so they've built little boat harbours everywhere, fantastic pontoons. But we're in the fish harbour. So that's the boat. And you'll see that as a Ketch, she also has the great luxury of all of the sails are furling to mizzen and the main, or furling to the mast, which makes it so easy. And the doghouse here, you see, is quite ugly looking from the outside, but on the inside, it's absolutely beautiful. So we rarely have to wear oilskins. So I shouldn't really say that, because that would be real roughy, toughy Arctic. We're in the doghouse, so it wasn't really. So from here, we headed north, 1,000 miles to Svalbard, just going straight north across the Norwegian Sea. This picture was taken at midnight, looking north when we're inside the Arctic Circle. We were motoring in pretty much a flat sea, and somewhere, I think about here, Paddy's drawn out later. Remember I mentioned the brand new engine? Yeah, so that was a quiet engine, it's just being a lot more quiet. So we're drifting, it turned out to be good water in the diesel. So I, being a lawyer, not a mechanic, did a lot of frigging about basically for a while, which made no difference whatsoever. So we were a sailing ship once again, and we thought better try to go into Norway, because they're bound to have somebody who knows about these things. So we set off for Norway, and then the wind went into the east, and then it got stronger. So we started heading for Iceland, both two. And then the wind shifted a bit, and we thought that was great. And Paul Copeland, former Irish Coast Guard, was doing his forecasts. Paddy would phone on the sat nav and have a chat about the forecast. And we started to think, we don't really want to phone Paul again, because it kept being east and 5s and 6s and things. Then it changed, and so we went forward a bit towards Norway. We didn't know would it be Allison to get into, or maybe it'd be Jorvik, but let's get over towards Norway. And then the wind came back in our nose, and we hove to and went back towards Iceland. And I was getting concerned, and I didn't like to say it, because the east coast of Iceland, for those of you there, there's one harbour which would be easy enough to sail into and get tied up. But there's only one pub, and it only opens when cruise liners come in, which typically is only twice a week. You know, so maybe not very attractive. Plus, it doesn't have any facilities for mechanicking for getting spares. So that could have been a mess. But in due course, the wind eased. We stopped on the inflatable again. We motored along like mad, battering away about a knot and a half. And then, as Paul had told us, it went into the south. That meant we could get to Jorvik. And we should say on our way across, the batteries went flat. So the chart plotter didn't work, and we ran Paddy at the dry cell battery and GPS, so we used that. I was so pleased and I felt really smart that I changed the electric toilets to manual toilets. Otherwise it would be not so good. Paddy, this is a posed picture, I can tell you. Paddy does not go near the galley. He doesn't go near food unless it's been cooked and served. He does wash and clean dish, but only one at a time. Well, this is Paddy. He would do the squats, he'd help you in the preparation, but don't go in and cook. But we're lucky. King Billy and the tank commander are both really good cooks, and they were churning out grog forest when the weather was fine. So, this part, you see here the diesel drums. We had 10 drums lined up on either side and petrol here. When you come from Belfast, you always want something to explode. So you can see here, just heavily reefed on the staysail and a little bit on the Yankee as well. Storms on, which sits up nice and up. And this is us, yes, without battery power. We kept the remains of one battery back in case we needed some battery power to try to get into somewhere on the boulevard, like somebody would give us an electric engine or something. So this is a drawing. Paddy's always taking notes and writing and drawing things, and that's why I knows what actually happened. I have a video about a lot of it. So the fares, we came up here on this bit of paper, and then we went to the right, and then we got moved to head towards Iceland, and then head away down there and across, and then away, and then we got the nice flat can stuff, and then the Southerlies came in, and we went to Orvik. And it's very interesting. Mark did the research for the Norwegian trip because he was going to join us in Tromsø and come south. And one thing he found was that the Norwegian lifeboat system is different from ours in that you can join it for about €120 a year. If you don't join it and they have to come and tow you in, you pay the full commercial rate, which is going to be horrendous. But if you join it for €120 a year, you get 3 free tow-ins. Which is great, you're coming back down if you're at this. I'm not sure it works that way. In any event, when we were getting close, we called them because we didn't know what Norway was like. We could see the pilot book was small, very small. It's up a 20-mile estuary. So we phoned them and we said, that's okay, we'll tow you in, but keep on sailing. So we sailed right up the estuary to about a mile from Norway, and then they came out and brought us in. The last stage with the flag up. And they came, so there's Orvik, they came, strapped on, brought us in. I'm glad they did, it would have been awkward sailing boat in because the harbour was so crowded. And so we're in Orvik, we got a mechanic out, it took about 3 days to come, it wasn't very good, but I got one tank here, diesel, swell and engine again. The boat is 2 tanks, 350 litres in each one. We met this guy, Toby, who is a conservation carpenter. He rebuilt this boat. He is a guy in Svalbard and is an incredibly interesting guy. He sailed this boat back from Svalbard, I think single-handed probably. Yeah. And then he's heading on down to Bergen where he lives. You see there, I mean, Norvik is quite busy. So Norvik's there. So Alison is here, so it's much better getting there. So we revised our plans. We should have been in Svalbard at this stage. So we revised our plans, which was basically just go to Svalbard anyway. And now we're going to the luxury of going up through the Hurtigruten. Hurtigruten is the Norwegian ferry system that runs up and down the coast. They have something like 16 boats, and they go just constantly big cruise liner style, big ferries, and they go on the inland route for the most part. It's very sheltered. And you can see we've got this is the inland route. I mean, flat water all the time, lovely scenery, which as you go further north gets more harsh part. And this is where we're starting to see the ice and snow. It amazes me in the Arctic every time you're there in the growing season, short though it is, all these lovely flowers, bog moss and things like that up here just for a few weeks. And then we get to Lone Islands, I think this is where actually in Tromsø, we've gone through a lot of places, went to Svalbard and the Lofoten Islands, which are magnificent. King Billy and I walked up these 500 big granite steps, which really killed me. Actually convinced me they're not 21 anymore. And then up eventually to Tromsø. Ron Adams, of course, one of the biggest explorers, the guy who arguably found the Northwest Passage. We got to the North Pole first, it's been in the South Pole, etc. And in Tromsø, we got the rail mechanics. This girl learned to be a mechanic in the Norwegian Army. They still have national service. And there's a young fellow working to her. They came in and they sucked the water, everything out of the tank. Got us up and running again perfectly, made some improvements, but they were transfixed because while they were working, the boys were playing music. She said it's the first time she's ever had a concert while she's working. So they bought us in this picture, they bought us some Norwegian beer and dried reindeer and things like that. So it was lovely. So at this point, we had a crew change. We have a crew change, what do we do? Yes, you're right, we have a party. So it was time for King Billy and Jack to head home. And the Cork gunmen, the Cork gunmen met us before we left from Tromsø to go north. These are the Cork boys. Ronald O'Queeve here on the right, who's a teacher, an athlete, a runner, a hiker, a hunter. Martin on the left is an archaeologist, a really interesting man who cycles. He's very fit, and they're super fellas all together. I'd never met them before until the weekend before we left, and we're great crack with them. But now we're about to leave, and Paddy's going to talk to you now about getting up to Svalbard. Fits at Svalbard for as long as he wants to talk. It could be days, of course. And also particularly about because I know some people are interested in how you organise a trip like this. You've heard about the food and the drink, getting the boat organised, putting the engine, taking the mast out, doing all those checks. But it's the actual notifications and permissions that Paddy will talk to you about now.
I don't know where I would pick up on this, but here we are in Tromsø. We are behind about a week and a half or so on our program. We did have 3 months, 12 weeks, 13 weeks to do what might be considered a 2-month trip if you kept going. But we had to allow ourselves stoppage time. So even though we had lost time in having to sail to the east and go up and get things fixed, we still had plenty of time. We still had sufficient time to do what we had planned to do. So now we were in Tromsø, and essentially all we had wanted to do was get out of it. Tromsø is the Paris of the north, but this is not where we wanted to be. I was limping around the place because after my lovely run in Startaway, an old injury came back at me, so I was limping around Tromsø. That was another reason to get out of it. So on we go. We're 600 miles to go to Longyear, up to Svalbard. Now Svalbard is the name of the archipelago, or the archipelago, and Spitzbergen is the name of the main island. This one here. This is an ice chart. And we had the previous winter studied the ice charts up, down, round and about. We knew a bit about this because from previous, normally the ice is down to the north coast and somewhere along there. And we had hoped that, well, we certainly get up the west coast. Longyear is in there. We'll see Longyear in a minute, and we'd hope to get down the Hinlopen Strait and back around this way here. And we had 3 plans for the sea ice. One was a bad year, the other was a good year, and the other was an exceptional year. And the way it was shaping up, bad news for the planet, good news for us, is that the sea ice was nowhere to be seen. And we were going to be able to do it all. We had 2 extra passengers in Tromsø. We had met two guys who were the skipper and mate, he called him the co-skipper generously, of a commercial yacht. And the SAS had a problem, and there were no flights going to Spitzbergen, Svalbard, and they came along with us, and this was good for them and good for us in that they were able to mark our charts, give us the inside track, and all sorts of stuff like that. So I have to say that the pictures that we're showing now of Svalbard and anywhere, as in all holiday pics, they're all taken on 5 days. We arrived in Spitzbergen, Spiky Island, wonderful, but it wasn't like this. It was foggy, and only for the chart plotter we might not have been sure of where we were. But yes, that is what Spitzbergen looks like now, and yeah, wonderful, and. But there's less, apart from the sea ice having gone at this time, there's less on the mountains than there used to be. There's visibly, it was 1990, 30 years earlier that I was there, and it was all white. Now it was, as you see it, but wonderful. And round we went to Longyear by passing lots of, this was the sea ice, this was glacier ice, and like the Eskimos have 30 words for snow, I'm sure they have many words for sea ice. Sea ice, first year ice is like timber, it's soft, it'll stop you, it'll squeeze you, but it won't kill you. Whereas glacier ice or multi-year ice that has existed for several years is like stone, like iron. There are differences in the ice, but happily all we had to do was weave around little bits like this, and we made our way into Longyear. We had a plan. And we had a revised plan now because our time was shorter than it had been, but we could still do the whole lot. We could still go, and we were able to go because the sea ice was the way it was gone. We were planning to do a full round of the Svalbard archipelago, and there was so much history there. Nelson had been there as a midshipman. He shot a bear. Frank Worsley had been there in 1925. This is Shackleton's skipper. We don't think about what they did after the Endurance and the Antarctic. Shackleton was a working seaman, a working skipper. He was there in 1925. We had read about where he went. Francis Crozier from Banbridge, he had been there with Parry when Parry was going to walk to the North Pole, he thought. And we were going to visit Hecla Cove, which was Parry's ship. We had this all lined up. This was going to be better than it ever could have been. We were going to get 10 out of 10 in terms of hitting the high spots, hitting everywhere. And we got into Longyear by then, and this is Longyear. No ice on the mountain. And this is the sort of a town it is. It used to be coal mining until about 1930. From 1910 or so to 1930, this was a coal mining town, and it has been cleaned up since. There's no more coal mining. Longyear, who was the American who established it, and Longyear Bay, Norwegian for bay. These are the lads. They went for a walk up the town, up the back, carrying guns as you have to. Every year in Svalbard, there's an incident, a serious polar bear incident. And not only is it required that you carry a gun outside the town, inside the town there was a restaurant, and it said, as you're unlikely to meet polar bear here, please leave your guns for reception. There were loads of cruise yachts and cruise ships. It's no longer for the intrepid. Yes, the boats are like this, and they carry 10 or 12 or 15 passengers who pay a lot of money. They pay. This one was 5,700 for 12 days, so-called into the wild. And yes, it is wild. And if something goes wrong, you can ring the governor of the system, and he'll send out his 2 helicopters, expensive helicopters. But it's not the way it used to be, and this is the same with the Northwest Passage and such places. The traffic, the tourist traffic, so-called explorers, so-called adventurers, and the people pay a lot of money to. And the best of luck to them. You know, one could take a sort of an elite position on this, but they enjoy themselves. They had the dosh. We were enjoying ourselves too, and we wanted just to get out of Longyear. We went up and paid our respects to the Sysselman, the governor. He had all our papers. Everything was fine. Away you go, and we headed off to do our circumnavigation as we had planned it. Oh yes, there were things like this. Please excuse the disdain. And this is not to show the two of us. We met this nice lady from Cambridge, and we chatted to her and invited her to coffee. And eventually, no thank you. And yeah, she did take our photograph. And this is more interesting insofar as this is the main street in Longyear. Pipes for heating, apartment blocks. It has no indigenous population in Svalbard. About 2,000, mostly Norwegians, who run the tourist industry. There's a so-called university there, where they do modules on Arctic ecology and such like. And yeah, it is a pleasant place, but this wasn't what we came for. We're on our way around, and away we go. And it wasn't like this at all. It was foggy. We went 200 miles up inside Prince Karl's Forest, Sundet, navigation interesting. At one stage, it drops off to about 8 feet at low water. But with the technology that we had, it was much easier, and we got around without incident into the most northerly village of science called New Alessand. And this is a Norwegian science station where in summer there are about 50 people, about 12 in winter, and we walked this village. Nice, we met a few of the people. Not much snow. There were we had seen on our way in there. We had seen on our way in a trapper's hut. All of this stuff is prefabricated, the same as Greenland. They prefabricate the stuff. In this case, in Norway, the air is clear. One can see longer distances. You think you're looking at 10 miles, and it could be 30 miles. You're going just around that headland. You'll get around this headland on your watch, surely, and you're come up 6 hours later, and you're still looking at it because it wasn't 10 miles. It was 30 miles, and and there are huts scattered around like this. We mentioned Toby, who was a conservation carpenter. They are very, very careful with these, and you can't just go in and put up a new door or do this, that, or the other. Trappers, some Russian, when we talk about Russians in a minute, there is a Russian presence in Svalbard. It's mainly entirely Norwegian with a couple of Russian spots. We'll come to these in a minute. And these were huts where individual trappers would spend the winter trapping foxes mainly. The furs have a high value, and these were the stovepipe and the hut, and there'd be a bunk on the far inland inside, and not much else. We were trotting around, happy as Larry, on our way, met 2 policemen, and bang. Where is it was Ronan. Ronan was our gunman, and he had been with me in East Greenland, and he had the guns, and he had the licenses for the Danish in East Greenland, and everything was good here. And we had the website, the Norwegian website, and the Norwegian website said that for guns you must notify them, which we had done. We had notified people. A 308, a heavy open shotgun with a 12 gauge plug, and just to frighten the bear before they would actually need anything else, we had a 303. The police asked for our licenses. Yeah, no bother. Like, they must pass out of the pocket the Irish license, and they said, "Where's your European license?" We don't need a European license. Your website, we have it here. Your website says a national license will do, and a European license also will do. They said, no, in Norwegian, you need a license. They took our guns, confiscated them, and sent them back 200 miles, back to the main place. We followed them back. We sailed back down. The weather was good. We were determined to make an event out of it, not just to be sulking. So we passed Mount Monaco. We went into this bay, Mount Monaco, as high as I would. Some pals had climbed this in 1990, and now I can only look at it. Turn this future. Anyway, glad to be there. We anchored that night in a lovely isolated bay, and the next day in to see the sisterland, and thought, well, Adrian is a lawyer that would deal with this, and he did say the law is the law, the native language is Norwegian is the native language, but surely the mitigating factor must be that in their own website in English it says a national license, which we have, would do. Got nowhere. We applied it. They fined us 1,000, and they confiscated the guns, which were worth about 3,000. But more importantly, without guns, we couldn't continue. It would be illegal, and it would be unsafe to go without guns. We employed a local lawyer. That's another 1,000. I say all this stuff quickly. Got nowhere, and we said, "Look, let's cut our losses. Let's go back." So I will reintroduce you to Adrian, who will describe the return journey to Norway.
Paddy was moderate the way I described Sisson and the lawyers bastards. Then the lawyer didn't come out and speak to us, he was going to speak to us through the police. But anyway, we made a decision, but we did have good fun along here in the Allison, and we saw some nice things. And here are some fun facts about Svalbard. There are the 4 most northerly towns in the world in Svalbard. Longyear by then is only 814 miles from the North Pole, so the Allison is 600 miles. The global seed bank is there. The inhabitants of Svalbard are from 50 nations, so it's the most diverse place in the world. And you don't need a visa to go there, and you don't need a work permit to work out, just turn up, and if you get a job, work away. You can't be buried there because they can't dig a hole because the ground's so hard. We weren't thinking of dying anyway. It's a fun fact. There are no trees there. There are more snowmobiles than people, which I find a bit bizarre. There are also more bears than people. And the other thing is women aren't allowed to give birth there, which maybe you might think shows how controlled they are. But just they don't have the facilities the family goes wrong. So anyway, back to Longyear, we started heading south. We went before we marked to Barentsburg. This is where Russia keeps a foothold. It's on the southwest corner. It is so Soviet. There were Ukrainians there, and apparently they all left for whatever reason earlier last year. The place is falling apart, but there is Lenin, and there's Martin thinking maybe he might just become a communist or Leninist or whatever. But we had a pleasant stop there overnight. This is from the old, again, coal mining place. And some of the interesting artifacts from that. You see how Soviet the apartment blocks are, the 2 on the right, and quite how that other attractive building rather on the right, maybe it's Ukrainian. We then had a party, there were several parties, and we had a bunch of stores in the boat, and in Scandinavia, and here, of course, but only to play. The landmarks, not that way. Because there was 24-hour daylight, it was about 3 in the morning, and the boys were excited. So this is Viking boats, we're now heading south, following the way the Vikings went. As you see, they didn't have a doghouse, so they're pretty hard. So Longyear, 600 miles back, and as we had hoped on the way up, we had hoped to call into Bear Island. On the way up, the wind had left us about 20 or 25 miles to the west of it, and on the way down, the fog had cleared a little, we were able to see the island. But it was 5 o'clock in the morning. There's only one place you can stop. There's a Norwegian weather station. We thought they probably won't welcome us at 5 in the morning, so we pushed on down. Because of our problems in the north, we had more time, so rather than straight to Tromsø, we called into Hammerfest, the most northerly town. And as we ran in, we were picking up forecasts which talked about a gale coming in on our nose, and we managed to beat that. And we're welcomed by the picture of this mighty stag standing looking at us. Maybe it's a good job we didn't have any guns at this stage, because Ronan would have had a pop. And Hammerfest, when we were there in 1990, it was a small village, it was friendly, we were invited to house parties. Now it's a lot bigger, there's an oil refinery that's been built on an island, and it was less attractive, but still friendly. And for example, I met this guy, Johan, who's a Sami, part of the indigenous people up there, who's got 1,500 reindeer, and still has the legal right to let them walk anywhere across the north of Norway, Sweden, Finland, and 1,500 reindeer makes him a wealthy man up there. So we're pushing south. We went into Alta, which is a town which has been rebuilt in the 1980s. It's got a university with the Arctic tourism and ecology. There's a museum to the Tirpitz, the German battleship, which hid in the fjord. Paddy and I went and looked at that. And also another museum where there's these carvings, which may be hard to make out, but between 4,000 and 7,000 years old. There are people, there are hunters, there are fishing, there are boats, there are animals, they tell stories, and they set it up with a lovely walkway through them all. And that's why we see all the different types, once you can identify which animal is which. Norway used to be as impoverished as Ireland was. It had an immigration at a similar rate to Ireland, mostly to America, like Ireland. But then things changed in Norway in the 1970s. Oil started coming ashore in 1971. They have a small population. Their governments looked after them not terribly well, so they're now spectacularly wealthy, which is why in every little village in winter there's a spectacular harbour, frequently just purely man-made, pontoons to die for, and now they've got immigration. And that is building up to be the problem with immigration, can be in other places. Back down to Tromsø and Helmer Hansen, as Paddy describes him, the Tom Crean of Norway. He was the boy who went with Crozier and Franklin and Parry and so on as the labourer, as it were, but an absolutely essential part of every single trip, and at least recognised in Norway. And they do recognise their heroes, Hansen, Henson, and so on. And they have a great museum, two museums. One is an Arctic museum, which is really well worth a visit, and another one further out, which does the ecology things in the modern world. It does geography, geology, it does social history. It's magnificent. So in Tromsø, another crew change. They joined us, Ray and Gurdy and Cal. Cal, a hiker, sailed quite a bit with Paddy, Paddy's son, musician. So it lasted an opportunity for me to have an intellectual conversation rather than some stupid engineering nonsense. Mark is a sailor, navigator, can do anything about the boat, and a software engineer. Ray had never been in a boat in his life before, so he started sailing in the Arctic. As did Martin O'Leary, the archaeologist. He had never been in a boat before. So his first trip was to join a boat in the Arctic and go north across the sea, which is pretty impressive stuff. So we went back down to Svalbard, and the boat was coming into it. Is there? What do they call it, Paddy? The goats?
No, you can see it sticking up just above your pointer.
There?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a big pillar of rock and on top of two small pillars. And you can walk up. I mentioned before the way north, I walk like steps every kilometre. Young fit people do the 500 steps, then a lot more, and then they get this pillar and then climb it, it's vertical. And then they climb one of the two little ones. And then what they do, and they're about 5 feet apart, and then the thing to do is jump from one to the other. I was far too busy to do that. But you can see the village here, and the mountains start right at the back of it. So yeah, we left. It was about a 60-mile run down to Budo, which is the municipal town. It's a population of 50,000, so it's a big place in Norway. And we got in about 8 in the morning before the weather arrived. It arrived that afternoon, and it did blow forced into the south. We were on a pontoon, very conveniently placed for the town. But we were out, we were sitting chatting and playing a game of cards. We had to bin all that and get out, and 4 of us plus 2 other guys helped push the boat out to get all 9 of our fenders in, and then we had to help other boats. So it did get difficult, but we struck lucky because Budo was having a week-long arts festival. So one night we were at a Philharmonic Orchestra concert, another night we were in a pub where opera was being sung, there was jazz in a restaurant, another day it was really worth being trapped for a while. And then again, it's full of museums, from civil and military aircraft to the social history to the 2 old boats. And we do that. At a time that, like everywhere, a lot of telephone boxes and public telephone. This is one of the last ones in Norway, it's in Budo. And it's now really an artifact, because there is this that explains it. There were 6,000 and now there are very few. Darkness is starting to come. We'd enjoyed 24-hour daylight for so long, which is magnificent. Now it's starting to get dark as we go south, and of course the season's advancing. And we needed to push on with 700 miles to do in 2 weeks, which involved doing a couple of nights, which is easy, straightforward enough with the chart plotter, got on the inland route and with some traffic and fish farms everywhere. You need to be in your mettle. At Budo, before we left, took a bus ride to this area, which is some Norwegian name on it, where the tide runs 15 to 20 knots. So I used to think the likes of Strangers and Arrows was pretty hairy, but looking at this, you really wouldn't want to be in it. But of course, everybody there to make a buck, the tour boats go up and down, big ribs with super engines. Ray, a walker, a runner, many things, a coffee barista. There's a half marathon on it, so he just did it. and we supported him to the point he finished in the time he in. This is his support and training team. Mark and I left the pub to welcome him home. As we went south, we went up a fjord. Another example of climate change. There's a glacier that the pilot book said calved its bergs into the sea. It doesn't anymore. It must be 100 yards back now. And we saw that in West Greenland, Paddy. The times we've been there, and we were seeing Svalbard, we were seeing it in Norway. But this was just a remote place. I mentioned this wealthy country, you get a phone signal virtually everywhere. But this place was so remote that we got a phone signal to it. And also the benefit, you see this little walkway on the pontoon, we were tied up to, it was free. It's the only thing that's free in Norway, not only because I didn't know we were there. But Paddy, look, but it's beautiful, isn't it? Paddy loves to make a fire. So he'd want to go ashore, he'd have a swim in the Arctic water, and not have a heart attack, thank goodness. And then he would go ashore and make a fire and sit up. And he might have kind of Guinness or he might not. And here, there was like a big brazier, barbecue type thing that somebody had left. So Paddy lit a fire and we made our dinner in the boat, and then we sat up admiring the majesty of this place. We ran south with easy weather, sometimes sailing at force 2 or 3 in our beam, mostly motoring, pushing on, say, 700 miles to get to Allison. And there were places we stopped. On our way north, we'd stop in Brunison, and there was a tribute band on for some rock group which drove Paddy nuts. So we just went straight past it on the way south. This is the two lawyers, contemplative, daydreaming about big cases and bigger feelings. And we got into Christiansund, a beautiful town on 4 islands. It's got a little ferry runs between the islands, and they claim it's the oldest public transport system in the world. And it's free, and you can get on and just travel about, it's great. And they have their clipfish, which is dried salted cod, is one of the things this place is famous for. Not surprisingly, the clipfish tastes of dry salted cod. But they have this boat museum, which is run by amateurs. They have a stack of Colin Archer boats, the lifeboats in there, and various other ones. We took ours going around the outdoor bit and the inland bit. And there, also in Christiansund, Cal met initially, and then introduced us to a rat catcher. I've never met a rat catcher before. Maybe it's not surprised, maybe all new rat catchers. But that's why I explained how you catch rats. And when you get a rat catcher, he does it for you. And he explained in detail this rat the size, I think, of a small elephant by the time the story finished, that he was battling with. But it was interesting things. As we kept on pushing south, this is another fjord, went up to another glacier that is retreated. But it was lovely, on this inland route, you can drift, you can take it easy. There's no concerns about weather. And this is, again, and you can see actually the rate at which it is melting. That this is, oh, there we go. That is just water pouring out of it there and there. That used to be right down in the sea. So again, it has retreated so much. It's still majestic to be able to sleep. And then to Allison, which was a timber-built town in 1904. It got burnt and 10,000 people were made homeless. Kaiser Wilhelm of Germany used to holiday in this area. So he sent 4 warships full of materials to start the saviour of those people, and then rebuilt. It was all rebuilt over a 3-year period in stone in an Art Nouveau style. It's absolutely magnificent, lovely cafes and bars, shops and places to walk. As you saw there, the properties are right down to the water's edge, so we really are in the middle of it. And here we did another crew change, which of course means another party. And Cal and Ray went home, and Sturdy, my stepson, and James, from England. Both of them now live in England. James is an Englishman, came on board, and you know, we thought we'd just stretch our arms out and welcome the English to an Irish boat. We made him sleep in the trickler, of course. I'm not sure he get used to. We told him a lot of Irish history about what the English had done. And I happily stood with one foot in each camp. James and Sturdy are not so much sailors, they're into horses and they're farriers. So they're tradesmen, and you know, they're tough boys without doubt. We had my 60th birthday there. I'm not 60th. But it was a good way for Sturdy to get the best deal from the rest. So I'm 68. So it was time to leave Allison, which is up there, it is there, and head for Lerwick and the Shetlands. Our problem was that just in about it is the Stead Headland, which sticks out. It's seen as being the junction between, I'll speak about the girlfriend in a minute. It sticks out, and it's the junction between the Norwegian Sea to the north and the North Sea to the south, if you know what I mean. And it's brutal. It is so brutal that at times they use lifeboats to escort merchant ships around it. It's so brutal that they are starting next year to dig a tunnel through the route of it for big merchant ships to try to avoid it. So we went out with the wind in our nose and got battered. And we battered for hours and hours to get enough of an offing. And when we were far enough off, we turned, we tacked, and we came down on the other side of it. And in the darkness, came into this little place on an island, and there was a small entrance that was hard to get into. But we did get in again, a magnificent pontoon, and about 10 houses, and nobody there from what we could see, apart from this lady, who sits on her plinth in the entrance of the harbour, keeping watch. We don't know why, we put her there, what the story is. But she stayed when we left. And off we went for Lerwick. And again, the wind was just off our nose, so we were going quite well with reefs in and so on. And then the steering broke. You know, I've never prepared a boat better in my life. As I said, new engine, all the electrics checked, we changed the toys, the masts were out, all checked, etc., etc. But then a weld on the steering quadrant broke, so no wheel, no self-steering. But and Mark was good, he was on watch. And I was on the boat, he came down and he said, "Cover him. No problems, no panic. There is no danger, just we don't have any steering." And it's hard to compute, no danger, no panic, and we don't have any steering. So we came up right enough and spun the wheel, and spun both ways and nothing happened. So the boat has an emergency tiller. So we had to rig that up from the afterbirth right and forward and set that back in the doghouse and hand steer, which was sort of quite enjoyable because we do it so little nowadays. And that got us into Lerwick in fog and the wind, and it was quite difficult in the fog picking up because there's no lights coming in, and you only get a little flash every now and then. But the chart pullers are a wonderful device, and Mark looks happy. So from Lerwick, Joe Pennington of the Isle of Man, the master flight, the gaff-rigged boat, joined us, and we left and went to North Ronaldsay, which this is a picture of. And if you ever get the chance of going to North Ronaldsay, the most northerly island in the Orkneys, go there. It is small, it's got a little bird observatory hotel type thing. They serve mutton, and the say it tastes great, and they're right. The sheep eat the seaweed, so it tastes a bit different. But it's just a lovely place, and you can get, there's a wall you can put a boat on, so long as the weather's gentle. And it was just beautiful. And from there, then we had to move on down to Kirkwall. Sturdy and James left us, so it was Paddy, Mark, myself, and Pennington. And Kirkwall is John Ray of the Hudson Bay Company. He, a very famous traveller and explorer, maybe found the Northwest Passage, or certainly in the beginning of it. But he also was the guy who met the Inuit who took him and showed him about 30 bodies from Franklin's expedition. And he saw the evidence of cannibalism. So he did his duty, he came back and he reported that in London. Of course, Victorian England didn't want to hear that the gentlemen had hit each other, so they told him to clear off. And he was ostracized for many years. But now he has statues to him and a thing in the cathedral for him. So we dieseled up and off we went, round Cape Bath, and down to Plockton, just north of Skye. And then we're just rushing down home through Colonsay, and back down the Irish Sea, Fort Patrick. We dropped the rat off in the Isle of Man, and over and back in the Stratford Dock, where you can see two happy boys. And that was our trip, and I would do it again.
That's an absolutely marvellous lecture. I'm sure there'll be a lot of questions. Adrian, what's the total cost of the trip?
Financially, I was going to say, probably, if you mean emotionally or financially, if you want me to say this to that much, financially, what we did when we did our sums, it was €400 per week per person. And that had you all flying on the boat. I paid the cost of preparing the boat for the trip, and that was at £400. That included, for example, the additional costs. Go to Svalbard, you have to have a search and rescue bond, which was about €17,000. So you either pay the bond, and if you don't need it, you get that back, or you get a bit of specialist insurance.
1,700. 1,700.
No, the bond was €17,000. The insurance premium was 1,700. So we retook the insurance. I had to change insurance companies to get a type of policy that the size on them would accept, because they set it out in the regulations, and anything else won't do. And I included a contingency which we needed, for example, getting diesel, clean of water, in Tromsø for the time that finished was €3,400. It is an expensive country. What saved a lot of money was loading up so much diesel here and again in Stornoway, and also taking all of our food with us, vacuum packing and so on, all Sanders work. So we were able to buy very, very little, just some fresh stuff. We even made a UHT milk and so on. So that kept the cost down. But that was it, €400 per week per person.
What are you going to get?
You coming with me?
What are you going to get?
I heard that. Are you coming with me? Yeah, no, you do not like that. I would like to go back up there for sure. It is magnificent. Norway is really good, and Svalbard is just beautifully remote. But also in Longyear, where in the summer you have 4,500 people, mostly guides and associated with tourism and research. It's a very vibrant place. It really is buzzing, and then you go to the remote places. So sometime in the next few years, definitely going back.
Are the anchorages deep?
Yeah, they're very deep, but like in Norway, as I said, pontoons everywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, we use the anchor 2-3 times. Yeah, that's all. In those occasions, you're able to creep into places and get the anchor lines. So that, I mean, you can go right up, like some of the glass here could show, you were 50 yards off, and you're still 100 feet over.
Talk about sailing conditions and why you chose that boat to have the space and out before. And did you get those guns back?
No, we didn't. They were a way to be destroyed. As I said, bastards. The sailing conditions, do you mean the sailing conditions up in Svalbard or Norway?
On the way back to Lerwick.
The way back to Lerwick, probably about 4 to 5, sometimes 6, just off our nose. So it wasn't horrendous. But coming around Stead Headland, the seas are so big. With any wind, it's just a horrible place.
In the heavy weather with the Ketch, what was your choice of sail?
If the wind was behind us,
Well,
on our beam in front of
probably
us,
on the beam, etc.
on the beam, if it was going to be on the beam, typically we'd be reefing all 4 sails. When it gets a bit heavier, then we've done the main and go on the 2 head sails and the mizzen. If the wind's forward of the beam, we'd be trying to keep more head sail up. So we've got a Yankee as a jib and then a staysail. So we're probably going to be reefing the Yankee's the biggest sail on the boat. So I might take a couple of rolls on it and reduce the mizzen a little bit take the mizzen off completely because it's probably such dirty air, and a little reef in the main, but not much. So we try to keep more up front, going up front.
And Galway,
Pardon?
and when you were going Galway.
Just keep everything up. I'm not very sophisticated.
Same as Wales.
We saw a lot of whales. We saw quite a variety of whales. We saw humpbacks, we saw minkies. I can't remember what else we saw, but there were lots of them about different days, lots of dolphins. We saw some walrus. We saw sea eagles. We didn't see any bears, unfortunately, but we didn't really get up to where the most. So yeah. Yeah.
Adrian, you can find out what the cause and how did you let the water get into the diesel?
Yeah, that's a very good question, Captain Curtis. Yeah, very clever question. If you remember, I said that from Stornoway to the Faroes, we had a lovely wind just forward of the beam, at 5 or something. We had a great sail. Paddy and King Billy were up. Billy's a racing man. In any event, Paddy went back to his youth, and they, to use the proper sailing term, sailed the arse off the boat. So she was dipping her leeward rail in the water a lot. Remember, this boat was built and kept in the bed for years and was sailing very gently. The breathers for the diesel tanks on the face of the steps leading up on the aft deck. So the water has been driven along there and come in through the breathers, which is a problem we never had before, never thought of before.
You referenced to horticulture and people said taking the route inside the island.
Yeah.
Just could you develop that a little bit more, getting up and down the west coast?
Yeah, from Bergen, isn't it starting where? Yeah, from Bergen right up to
Vardo.
Bardo. So right up around the north of Norway, these ferries run. And there is, for a large part of that, an inner channel, if you like. Sometimes, only a few boat widths wide, of those big boats, I mean, sometimes very wide. So for the most part, you're inside shelter from Bergen all the way up to the north of Norway. There are some bits you'll be out and exposed to the Norwegian Sea, but for most of it, you're in that, and you have different routes to take in different places. Even island to port or starboard, for example. So if you look, if you actually Google hurdy-gurdy, you'll see the route. It's incredible. And of course, because these big ships are going up, all the bridges are built are very high. So there is a route past all the bridges. Still have to check some of the narrower bits, the ones they would use might be lower.
What happened to Spirit?
What happened to it? It broke. You don't understand what that means. It broke, it doesn't work no more. It was the quadrant on the top of the rudder stop, which is stainless steel welded onto a bracket, the weld gave. So, as I say, we put the emergency tiller over the top of the rudder stop and then we're set fine. And when we got into there, we were able to take off the quadrant, which was a foot long, 18 inches, and take it away to a man with a welding machine with the bracket, and he stuck the two together again. And so it was a very easy repair, fortunately.
Apart from the bomb to enter Svalbard, what else was required? I'm sure the boat had to have a holding tank. That sort of stuff. What other requirements?
First thing you have to do is you have to fill in a big form, the notification, and more than 3 months prior to your arrival, you have to send it to the Sison and the governor. And in that, you have to put in all the details of the boat so they can assess the boat's fit for the trip. You have to show that you have a chart plotter, you have AIS, that you have a sat phone or a Garmin type satellite fella. You've got your raft, your flares, and you've got to put in 1.5 guns, but the type of guns you're going to bring, because they insist on you having 303 or heavier caliber. You have to then put in all the crew that are going with their experience. Now, luckily, Paddy and I have had much more experience in Arctic than me, but we're both more than enough. Also, that time, Terry Irvine from County Antrim was going to go with us, and he's lots of Arctic experience. He couldn't go because his mother wasn't well, but he was going at the time of the application. So you put all that stuff in, they assess and send it back, and it's for that information that they set the amount of the bond that you'll be required to prove you have. I think that's about it, Paddy, isn't it?
That's it, yeah.
Yeah, and then Paddy also arranged all that, and he also arranged some of the other permissions. There's some of the more protected areas, and that you need a separate permission for, and they will give you maybe a week of a window when you're allowed to go in and only be in that area for the 2 days. Because they're very protective. I mean, if you're not allowed to touch anything near shore, there's skulls lying about animals and humans and bones and things, the trappers' huts and so on. You're not allowed to touch them. In the summer, they have police out round Spitzbergen. So they have police that bring in, I think there are only 3 or 4 feeders there full time. And in the winter, they're on long year. In the summer, they bring them in like the guy and girl who scooped our guns. He was a policeman from Oslo, and she wasn't a policewoman at all, she was a biologist. But that was important. But you see, the Peter from Oslo, who's released from traffic duty for the summer, wouldn't really know too much about the ecological damage clowns like us are going to do, whereas she did. But she had all the powers to arrest and all that stuff. So, and they have them on big, fast boats. They were taking, I think there were 4 couples doing that the whole way around, covering like 300-mile areas. So, and they will come and check us as we find, they came and checked us for a license and unfairly took the guns from us. But they are very protected. And all that guns issue, there was a cruise liner, and of course they want to take their passengers ashore in big rigs, so they need guides who've got rifles with them. One cruise liner, 50 guides, so 50 rifles. They lost them all because of this change in the law, which insisted on European license. Another cruise liner had 12 guns on it, they lost 6. Because these guys didn't realise the law changed either.
Just as well, President.
So I got a mess. What if the cruise company saying last I'm sorry, you can't go ashore.
Yeah.
What a mess. Yeah, so that's the sort of paperwork I have to do.
So just when you get that permission, is it time expired? Do you have a window that you have to?
That season, for the actual permission to go to Svalbard, it's just for that season. For the more protected areas, they give you like a week. I'll give you the dates where you can be in there. So they can read 2 or 3 areas.
I might ask one myself, is Svalbard volcanic? Did you have an Iceland?
It's not anymore, it was.
Yeah, pretty volcanic.
Apparently it was connected right down through the north of Norway across to Scotland. But that wasn't in my life.
Thank you very much indeed. So without further ado, I'm going to ask Mr. Mark Sweetnam to close the vote. Thanks, Adrian and Paddy.
Right, well, I couldn't put it better myself, Cormac, in terms of proposing a vote of thanks. An exceptional talk, really, really interesting. Congratulations.